data can make a story more authoritative. Here's an example from a few years back from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, where they got data from actually like 30 different states. They were focused on Wisconsin, about the delays in newborn testing. So immediately in the hours after a baby is born, they take blood and they send that blood to labs, which is supposed to test for maybe genetic disorders or other things. And they found that those labs were backlogged, and so those delays were leading to babies actually dying and having serious issues. But they were able to show that because they got the data from the state that said, this is a fact. These are not getting tested in a timely manner. Contextual. So this is an example of a story about student loan debt. And I like that. I mean, this is a pretty basic chart, but it talks about the average monthly student loan payments and things like that. I think there's a lot of talk and a lot of stories about student loan, and it's surpassed $1 trillion in total student loan debt in the country, right? But I think good data reporting breaks that down and looks kind of more deeply at it, right? How much are people really paying on their student loans? What's the average per person, right? That those sort of contextual numbers that I think add a lot to a story. Relevant. I think when done well, you can use data to sort of turn something that's a big picture story into something that people can find something to relate to. So this was a story about nursing homes, and they created a database where you could search a nursing home where maybe you had a loved one who lived, or in your neighborhood, right? And you could see how did that nursing home compare on these factors to other nursing homes around the country, right? So that makes a story about maybe nursing home care in this country isn't up to par. That's a story, but if you can really relate it to people and have it be something that's relevant to them or to their loved ones. Transparent. So using data can help readers and the general public sort of see how you got to the conclusion that you came to in your reporting. So this was a story, again, a few years back in Sarasota, where they found that judges, I guess Florida has a sort of strict tool that they use to determine the risk factors for defendants in the criminal justice system for sentencing, and they were able to use those scores and find that black defendants with the exact same scores as white defendants were getting sentenced to longer sentences. Not surprising for those of us, unfortunately, who have done reporting on the criminal justice system, right? But they were able to prove with their analysis. And then actually there was this whole thing where the judges fought back and said, no, your analysis is wrong. And they were able to present actually to the public, hey, here's the steps we took, and here's why our analysis isn't wrong. And that transparency, I think, helps build, obviously, trust in the work that you're doing. Reproducible. So this is something, this is from ProPublica, a nonprofit investigative journalism outlet. And they do this a lot where they get data for the entire country, and then provide that to the public and to reporters around the country to help them kind of localize a story. So this is about subsidized housing. And again, you can, they created a database so you could search for your zip code, your state, and find housing developments near you and see how they did on the HUD inspections that they are supposed to do, right? So that allows other people to reproduce your stories on a local level, or vice versa. And jump in if you have questions or anything. This is a story from me, sorry. But this is about Chicago police misconduct lawsuits. So data reporting and some of the tools of data reporting can make reporting a lot more efficient, a lot easier to do. I actually, the reason I was able to write this story is I had set up a little sort of website tracker, and it's just a Google Chrome plugin that tells you when a website has changed. So the city has a website where they publish their kind of monthly list of all the settlements that they had paid out. And so when that updated, I got an email that said, hey, they just changed this website, and that made it super easy for me to go in and say, okay, now we've got a full year of data again, and here's how much we paid out last year, $113 million. And then lastly, I think is compelling. This is a story from the New York Times about taxi drivers in New York and how they got loaded down with debt in order to pay off the taxi loans. And so they broke down, they took one taxi driver who they had met and broke down what all his weekly costs are and what he actually takes home at the end of the month. So I just think, to me, like, that tells a story right there. Like, when you can put data in a really, tight, compelling graphic like that, more than the whole rest of the story, which was probably, 15,000 words long, right? This really tells the story of, like, hey, look, after, $11,845 that he brings in driving a taxi every month, he ends up with $1,400. And here's, like, how much money his loans are taking up.
I've got a question on that.
Yeah.
So how much, as somebody who gathers the data and feeds it back to reporters, or however it works, how much input might you have in the design of its presentation?
Yeah, so it varies in every newsroom, and sort of different newsrooms and different news organizations sort of work differently. Some have designers who do that work, and maybe work with reporters or talk to reporters. Some, like, it's a kind of one-person shop where the reporter is, gathering the data and creating a graphic, or using, there's lots of off-the-shelf tools that you don't need to know how to code or anything fancy to be able to put together some nice graphics. And we'll talk actually a little later about how to present data, what are kind of best practices when it comes to that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So it seems like all the examples that you used are very the data is very quantitative, so a lot of numbers. Does data journalism also work with more qualitative data?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think, and I think we'll talk a little more about that also in a minute. But yeah, I think part of data reporting is really thinking about everything as potential data. There's data everywhere, even in the things that like you said, are more qualitative. And it's just about sort of thinking about, well, how do to me, the word data does carry, like, a connotation of something that you can quantify, right? You need to be able to put numbers to something. But I think it helps to sort of think about everything is quantifiable if you are just able to sort of think about it in a what I like to call a data state of mind, which is, again, something I borrowed from someone else, but I'll talk about it in a minute. So lastly, data can be really impactful. So this is based on some reporting that ProPublica and WBEZ did. They analyzed ticket data, particularly city sticker tickets, and found that there were people getting multiple tickets on the same day. There were people getting tickets when they had a city sticker. They found all these racial and socioeconomic disparities in where tickets are handed out. And actually, this presentation's a little old. So first, the city decided to throw out 23,000 duplicate tickets, and actually within the last month, they just announced a huge debt relief program for people with city ticket debt. So using data, I think, can make your work a lot more impactful, and that's a good example of that.